Wilson?
Curley?
Okay, so do we need to go back? How far back do we need to go on the story? So here, ready? Seattle Times says the headline that calls for John Wilson, tax assessor, also running for King County executive. He needs to step down. The mayor comes in right away. Absolutely, he needs to step down. But there was a restraining order that was filed against you with your partner. What was the official term? His girlfriend, partner? You guys were going to get married at some point, weren't you?
We were engaged.
You were engaged to get married. Okay. So a restraining order is filed. Then text messages are released. You saw all those, right? Okay. And then you sent me the fact that a restraining order was then terminated or suspended. She filed to have the restraining order. I think it was May 23rd or something like that.
Right.
Meaning like, okay, I don't want the restraining order now.
Right.
Okay, so then that went away.
It hasn't gone away yet. That's
okay.
The trick is that she's reneged on what she already signed and was ready to be filed with the court. So literally the deadline is right now. We sent her attorney an email yesterday and said, look, by 5 o'clock close of business Tuesday, we want to know, are you going to follow through and honor your commitment? And that it has been signed in advance by both attorneys. Mm-hmm. So it's a legally signed agreement.
Okay.
Or are you actually going to renege on that and we'll go to court to force enforcement of it?
Okay.
Yes. While John Wilson you're being interviewed by Curley,
yes,
I get a call from Lee Keller, who has now sent us a statement.
That's Mr. Wilson's.
This is Wilson's
girlfriend, partner, former fiance.
Right.
Okay.
Here's the quote from her attorney. The restraining order against John Wilson remains in place. I will not be changing my mind despite his repeated efforts to coerce me to dismiss it. A hearing on the restraining order will be held on June 30th, 2025. I welcome the opportunity to address John's reference to a signed agreement at that time and inform the court of John's continuing violations of the very active restraining order. So his claims that this restraining order have been, they've agreed to dismiss it, according to Keller's attorney, that is inaccurate.
What is it like to open some media source and see text messages in there? And the text message or something like, she says stop or don't. You were going to talk to her and you've sent her, they say, 45 text messages. This is your personal life that's now made public.
So much of our lives were on text. And, one of the things that one of our counselors, and we've both gone to, as a couple, to two different counselors that we are seeing individually and have seen together.
And what was the intent of the counseling? What, you guys are trying to work this out to stay together or an amicable parting?
No.
Okay.
She's come back each time and said, look, I'm really sorry. I want to make it work. And this happened even after this TRO. And that she, through an intermediary, said, will you let John know I so love him. I'm so sorry about this. I'm getting it dismissed and all that. Look, it's not fun. But I recognize politics is a contact sport. But there ought to be some ethical parameters to it. After the Seattle Times ran its article in January, David Gutman, the reporter for the Times, filed a Public Records Act request asking for all documents of investigations, complaints, or other things about Mr. Wilson's conduct as assessor. You want to know how many he found? Not a one. Why? Because I've conducted myself in the utmost professional manner. Frankly, you go into and do that same request against Ms. Balducci as far as her treatment of staff and that, you're going to find complaints. Lots of them. And people that have been forced out who have quit and say she's one of the worst people I've ever had to work for. My people in turn say they're one of the best people they've ever worked for.
So as it stands, they're going to use these private allegations and, muck to throw at you. It's a it's a move that people would make in politics.
Sure.
Right. You get that. And so that's what it is. So that's why you file the ethics complaint against her, which is, it's obvious what she's trying to do. So does this ethics complaint have any traction? Will this thing go anywhere? What happens with that?
Well, one would certainly hope so. I mean, there I think are very legitimate grounds, and there are grounds to ask for further record production from her and others, because this has clearly been orchestrated. Look, part of the things that you see here, John, and sadly this has become emblematic of it, and you and I have talked about this before. I'm not the candidate of the status quo. I'm not the candidate of the cool courthouse club. I'm the outsider, and I scare the hell out of them, because I represent common sense, and I represent somebody who will actually do something about crime, housing, taxes, and homelessness. And they don't want to do anything. They just want to dance around. Both of them are looking at this office, Zahaleh and Balducci, as some kind of launch pad to something else, or someplace that they're entitled to stay in. I'm looking to do the job for the people. But when you step out of line and challenge the status quo strikes back. And it's time for the public, and I've gotten lots of messages from people over the last week that indicates they've had it, and they are going to rise up. And come August, Ms. Balducci is going to learn a lesson. And, that they would try to deny the public the right to vote for a candidate that we know, when you put the issue to them, I run 20 points ahead of Balducci or Zahaleh. 20 points. That's a margin of victory.
I guess on the positive side, we're talking with John Wilson, who is running for King County Executive and is the tax assessor right now. The positive thing is, if they didn't feel that you were a threat, they wouldn't be doing any of this sort of stuff.
Damn straight.
So take that as a positive, if there's any positive to come out of this.
The only council member that had the courtesy and courage to call me was Jorge Barron. And Jorge said, look, I'm going to probably issue something, but I want to talk to you. And I said, sure. And we talked. And this was a week ago Thursday. He said, but John, I don't see how you can possibly serve the public. I said, Jorge, let me tell you what I was doing just a few hours ago. I was down in Auburn talking to 50 senior citizens, telling them how I could save them thousands of dollars on their property tax bill. And did one of them say to me, Mr. Wilson, you can't possibly serve me. You can't possibly be a help. No, when I mentioned that I was running for county executive, they said, Mr. Wilson, how can we help? We need somebody like you in office, not the kind of people we've had.
So I guess, again, to try to find some positive on this, which is the idea that people would then see this as the system, right? The group, the powerhouse, the Democrats, circling around and then throwing a charge of domestic violence, which is libel or slander. I don't know if she knowingly knows that it is a lie and says it anyway in public.
Well, of course she does.
That is a charge. That's a criminal offense, is domestic violence. She said in that cut, right? So she's charging you with domestic violence. And I don't hear it. What was the vote on this thing to kick you out as the tax assessor?
You only had 3 votes.
Her,
Zahaleh, and Mosqueda. And everybody else either excused themselves or voted no. So, her notion that she had the majority, even they understood the simple elements of justice, that this was, a PR job more than a policy or a legitimate thing. But, that's the shame is I think the public is so sick and tired of this kind of crap. They go, I want government that works. They don't care about my love life. And to be honest, yes, we've had a stormy relationship. Has it adversely affected my ability to serve the citizens of King County? Not one damn bit.
You can you still contact Ms. Keller?
No.
You're not allowed?
No.
If this restraining order is suspended or dismissed, then you can contact her.
Yes, and actually, the interesting thing about the restraining order is, as long as I am not within 1,000 feet of her home, her work, or her classroom, I can be at the same event as Ms. Keller, which may well happen later this week.
Because wouldn't you want to ask her, did somebody call you or text you or in some way get in touch with you and say, listen, just do this and we'll get John out of the race? I mean, if I were sitting there watching this as a movie, I'd be like, well, obviously, like, why all of this stuff so public? Why the text messages so public, knowing this would pretty much be the end of your campaign?
Well, first of all, I disagree with this end of my campaign. First, I'm not getting out. We're going to run hard.
No, but so the plan would be.
Yeah, right. No,
Right.
that's clearly what, and that. I wish, that I could figure out what was going on in her mind. But, the shame is Lee has bounced back and forth over the 4 years. You see that in the text thread. One of the things that was very obvious when you look at it is you understand where it says never. The never wasn't a threatening never. It was one of the things our first counselor said about me to her that she related to me. She said, Genja says you're a lot of things, but one thing you most certainly are, persistent. And she said, part of why I love you, you've never given up on us. Well, now I've given up on us.